Hi guys, so I was making some Mlinci for our chicken roast dinner and I decided to film it so that I have it in the archives and so that you can see a traditional Croatian recipe. Now Mlinci is something that is between a flatbread and a pasta. We first bake it or roast it and then we boil them so that we can eat them. And this is my family's recipe. So, optional ingredient here is egg. You don't actually need to have an egg. You can omit it if you want to make a vegan version. But my family uses 3 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 1 egg to start. After I add the flour and the salt in a bowl, I just quickly mix it up with my spatula, and then I proceed to add the egg. Traditionally, my grandma would use the egg shells to measure her water, so she would always put as much water as it fits in the eggshells, but instead of eggshells I just use spoons. So for the start I add an egg, I add same amount of water, and then I mix it all with flour until it's completely combined. This will make the flour seem a bit more yellow and it will seem something more like sand consistency. After that, I just add 3 by 3 spoons of water to slowly get it to the consistency of the dough. I'm using gluten-free flour, but the recipe and the entire process is completely the same whether you're using a gluten-free or an all-purpose flour. The only important thing is to not use a flour that has any leaveners inside them. So it should just be a plain all-purpose flour. I know I have reached almost the right consistency when it's quite hard to mix and then still seems to be like a couple of tablespoons of flour that isn't incorporated into the big blob of dough. Then I just add a couple of more tablespoons of water and I mix it in, and you will see that I still have a little bit of unincorporated flour, but not much. I know that I need to have at around 2 tablespoons of unincorporated flour to make the Play-Doh consistency dough. So when I add my last spoon of water, I'm now going to use my hands to completely combine the dough into one big ball. It doesn't take a long time of kneading, you just need to get it so that it's all combined and that there is no loose flour on the bottom. If you need to add a bit more water, then add a bit more water. So when I'm happy with my dough, it should come into out of the bowl without any sticking to it. It should not be sticking. You can see I can very easily manipulate it. I can very easily tap into it, and it looks basically like a Play-Doh. You can play with it. I'm just going to now put it back into the bowl, and I'm going to oil the top so that it doesn't form any crust. The fat inside the bowl is also something that is going to help me get a little bit more of the fat and the oil into the dough, because usually some recipes do include oil or dough or fat in a dough. Then I'm just going to cover it and I'm going to leave it for an hour. It will not rise, there's no raising agent inside, but it will hydrate through and it will be ready for rolling out. The next step is to take my dough out of the bowl and to knead it lightly, just to incorporate all of the flour, and also to make the dough a bit more moldable. You don't need to knead it a lot, maybe just a minute, and then just stretch it and form it into shape so that you can easily cut it. I like to form it into sort of a round shape. I don't know why, but it's kind of what I prefer to cut. When cutting a dough, I like to keep the pieces as uniform as possible, but that's not really a requirement. They can be any shapes and size you like. They really shouldn't be any... It's not necessary for them to be the same shape. But I have a bit of professional deformation when it comes to the dividing of the dough, so I always keep my dough in a pretty constant size. When I have cut it into the pieces that I like, I'm going to put all other pieces except one back into a bowl and cover it with a lid, and this one I'm going to start rolling out. So to roll it out, I just simply shape it into a big disc, and then I put some flour on so that it doesn't stick to the surface and that it doesn't stick to my rolling pin. You can see that the amount of flour is a pretty good amount of flour, I would say. Your surface should be floury, be it a gluten-free dough or a normal dough. And you just need to now stretch it out. Now when you roll the dough, just make sure that there's not a lot of flour residue. For that purpose I'm using rice flour to roll the dough. It just performs the best. It doesn't stick that much to the dough and my dough ends up being clean. And now I'm just going to continue until all of my pieces are rolled out. I'm not doing a vegan version of this dish now, but you can do a vegan version of this dish if instead of meat you can use mushrooms. They go pretty well with porcini mushrooms, and this is still like one of my favorite combinations is porcinis with Mlinci. It's just nom. If your dough gets to stick a bit more, just add a bit more flour and it should be good to go. This dough is super easy to roll out. You don't have to think about the size, you don't have to think about the shape. You just roll it out so that it's 1 millimeter thickness, which is 1/32 of an inch. It can be anywhere between 1 to 2 millimeters, so 1/32 to 1/8 of an inch. Honestly, it's better if you make it a bit thinner than a bit thicker, because if it's a bit thicker then it will take a bit more time to cook. And with this, my Mlinci are ready for baking. preheat your oven to its maximum temperature. You need this to be super fast, so you just need to roast them really fast and to dry them out. And then you take your baking sheet and you just put your mlinci on top of the sheet and make sure that they are not overlapping. They can touch, so the edges can touch, but they shouldn't overlap. Other version, if you have, especially if you have a wooden stove, you can actually bake them similar to tortillas stovetop. But I find that in my apartment this can produce a bit of smoke and then all of the smoke alarms go off, and that's like not really a good idea. When they're nicely set up, then just put them in the oven and bake them until they look like this. They should puff up a bit and have a little bit of puffiness, but they should be pretty firm. Like, you really want them to dry out. Unlike when you're making tortillas, mlinci, they need to dry out. So just make sure that they don't burn because your oven is super hot. When one batch is done, then just quickly add another one on still warm sheet pan. It's completely fine, you don't have to really worry about it. When the mlinci are baked, now it's time to cook them. For this, we first have to prepare the fat that they are going to go in. So for this we need about a quarter cup of chopped onions. You can dice them pretty fine or big. I wouldn't dice them super fine. And I'm using here a tablespoon of just plain oil and a couple of tablespoons of my chicken drippings. The mlinci don't have a lot of flavor, and we actually flavor them with fat and with onions. When you are making your onions, make sure that they don't burn. When the onions are completely translucent and completely cooked, I'm going to just put them back into my roasting pan when my chicken was roasting. Or if you have, you can just put them on the side if you don't want to make a vegan version. And drizzle them a bit with the mushroom, with the water in which you steep the mushrooms in. This is like super delicious. Trust me, you have to try it. And for the mlinci, I'm going to boil some hot water, salty water, the same as you would do for pasta. When the water has reached a rolling boil, I'm now going to take my mlinci and I'm going to, crumble them inside. I want to have like big patches of mlinci, but I don't want to put the entire one mlinac inside my bowl. I just want, to like have patches of them boiling. Similar in size. Don't go too small though, you do want to have them a bit more chunky. And just make sure that when they are in the water that you push them with a spatula or something so that they go below the surface of water. Depending on thickness of the mlinci, they are going to take like 1 to maybe 2 to 3 minutes of cooking time. They are going to go soft super fast, so as soon as they are soft, take them out of the water, strain them and put them into your fat with onions. I put them into my roasting pan and I use them also to deglaze the little bit of foam that was left from the roasting of the chicken. You can serve mlinci with any type of meat or with mushrooms, in case of a vegan friend. Or if you just want to eat something that has no meat. Now I transferred Mlinci to my serving dish, and the next step that I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna layer my roasted chicken on top. That's it. They're ready for serving. You can also layer them like a layer of Mlinci, layer of mushrooms, layer of Mlinci, layer of mushrooms, and then just put a tiny bit of cheese on top and bake them so that the cheese is melted. And you can also serve that as a vegetarian version or vegan if the cheese is vegan. Thank you for watching. I hope you give this a try, and I'll see you soon. Take care, bye bye!